All right, everyone. I'd like to introduce Oliver Dodd. Oliver Dodd is co-founder and executive director of Nucleate, the global nonprofit he helped launch in 2021 to help early career scientists translate research into biotech companies, now spanning 40-plus regions and 280-plus academic institutions. He earned his PhD at Harvard, working under George Church's lab at the Weiss Institute on pooled in vivo functional genomics for cell homing, and has also served as CEO and co-founder of Remora Therapeutics. Since Nucleate's founding, Oliver has held a series of its senior leadership roles, founding EVP of Operations, Co-President, and COO, before stepping into his current role as the Executive Director. So I'd like to hand it over to Oliver to share a little bit more about Nucleate.
Thank you so much for that very kind introduction, and thanks to Jeff, Patrick, and the whole Research Hub team for inviting me here to speak today. It's a lot of great speakers, a lot of great topics, so I'll do my best to keep you guys entertained and be somewhat interesting, although it's going to be hard. Yeah, so I think we've heard a lot today about ecosystems, funding, new ideas, and I really want to focus, on a couple of things, but primarily talent. At Nucleate, we're a 501c3 as well, so we're a nonprofit, and we're on a mission to empower the next generation of biotech leaders. We have this thesis that it's really education, not capital, that is the earliest bottleneck for biotech innovation. So if you think about the steps that are required to create transformative technologies to affect human health, you have all of these breakthrough ideas that are originating in academic and translational research environments. However, most scientific talent actually at the bench is never exposed to pathways beyond the lab. So therefore, early career scientists really lack access to the education, mentorship, and community that they need to translate their ideas into real-world impact. And Nucleate was really created to be this sort of missing development layer between academic discovery and real-world impact. So what we serve as is a sort of global innovation and talent development platform. So we're not associated formally with any one institution or region. Instead, we take a grassroots approach where we've built this grassroots network of chapters, leadership members, industry mentors, experts, advisors, and partners that stretches in 45 different regions across 22 countries. We have a number of open access programs that are all of our programs are completely free to our participants. The flagship program we have is called the Activator. So this is our company formation engine. The Activator is an educational program that helps pull innovation out of academic environments and then supports those innovators with a structured curriculum to hopefully get them to the point where they incorporate their company and they're off to the races, or they fail so fast that they never even incorporate and they go on to do the next thing. We also have a collection of programs that serve career interests in the industry beyond entrepreneurship. We call this collection of programs our PATH initiative. So there we run workshops, fellowships. We do a lot of virtual seminars and in-person gatherings. And then finally, we do a lot of events, and we also have a good media presence and create open access educational resources. And we try to use the sort of convenings and the resources that we create to sort of continuously stimulate the ecosystems in which we operate. And I was talking about this earlier on a couple of panels. The word ecosystem has come up, many times. I think one of the advantages that we've seen with the sort of grassroots effort of community building at Nucleate is that it is cross-institutional, and it really forces everyone to come together into the same place, right? So you take, for example, the Nucleate New York chapter, which we've got some of the folks here that are quite involved in running that chapter. That chapter is run by 70 PhD and postdoc students drawn from over 14 institutions. And we actually draw the innovation that we support every year in our Activator program from those institutions and go directly to the researchers that are actually working on the science to help support them. And the impact that we've had through our programs is really focused on sustaining the talents and innovation pipelines in our industry, which have been under threat through sort of constant headwinds that we've seen over the past few years, both on the sort of macroeconomic side as well as the policy side. But despite that, we found that by directly going to the innovators at the bench and giving them this educational opportunity, we've been able to create a lot of impact both on the innovation and the talent outcomes, right? So on the innovation side, we've helped support now the formation of more than 600 400 companies that have raised about $1 billion in follow-on capital and created more than 1,000 jobs. We consistently hear from our alumni, like, for example, Ivana, who started this great company called Vitra Labs out in San Francisco, that participating in Nucleate was really critical for them to find, their co-founders, their board members, their investors, and really take some years off their development timeline by providing access to a structured curriculum and a community that really helped them accelerate their innovation. In addition, we have this very large leadership team. So we've got over 900 active leadership volunteers. So these are PhDs, postdocs, JDs, MBAs that volunteer their time to actually run our programs and operate our chapters. And these folks, go on. Now we've got more than 3,000 leadership alumni to work in really all different levels of the industry. So these folks are, at VC firms, they're at pharmaceutical companies, they're doing wet bench, dry bench roles all over the map. So this is just like a quick sort of case study of how Nucleate really helps scientists, founders start companies without taking equity. So one of our cohort 1 companies, Manifold Bio, led by Gleb and his team. So they actually participated in the Activator in 2019, coming out of the Church Lab, and they were pre-incorporation at the time that they did our program. And they really used the program as a way to transition from postdocs into company founders. A year out of the program, they raised their $5 million seed. 2 years later, they did their Series A, and then 3 years after that, they signed the largest 2025 AI bio deal in the preclinical space of the year with Roche. And this is also a great example of sort of the Nucleate network connectivity. Roche Genentech has actually been a long-standing sponsor of Nucleate's program, and we actually were the ones that made the initial connection between Manifold and Roche years before this deal happened, which gave both parties the time that they needed to really work together to figure out, what is the scientific work that needs to be done to de-risk this technology, and on Roche's side, really being able to follow that technology development for multiple years before making that business development decision. So the other outcomes that I think we create on the talent side is really creating transformative outcomes for thousands of emerging biotech leaders across the globe. So again, these are mostly the folks that are running our chapters and participating in our programs. When I ask our alumni of our leadership to give testimonials about Nucleate, probably the single thing that we hear most often is that Nucleate was a life-changing journey, or it was transformative for their career outcomes. These are honestly probably the most common things that I hear from our alumni, and it's really amazing just to see how the skills that these leaders learn by doing this sort of grassroots organizing around the industry really can't be replicated, anywhere else. So, for example, Michael Retchin, who's one of our previous co-presidents and now is actually the CEO of his own company, where they're using LLMs to predict clinical trial outcomes, I think said it perfectly. You don't get the kind of leadership experience that Nucleate gives you in grad school or really in any other academic environment. And, I like to say everything that we do for our participants of our programs is totally free, but nothing in life is free. And it's really with the support of our partners that we're able to, stay honest and to our open access mission. So just a huge shout out to all of the industry supporters that support Nucleate in a monetary sense, but also in a strategic sense, right? Really giving back to the next generation of innovators and leaders by helping them take a few years off their timeline and providing them access to critical feedback and resources. So with that, I want to thank everyone. And again, a huge shout out to the ResearchHub Foundation for having me here. And apologies, Jeff, for sending you these slides so late. So that was on me. I'm glad that we were able to get them loaded up. And if anyone wants to learn more about Nucleate, you guys can scan the QR code. It'll take you to our link tree. We are currently accepting applications for our Activator program where we help people start companies. We're always looking for folks that want to support the organization in a strategic or a monetary sense. And we've got this great summit coming up later in August in Dallas, where we'll be convening 600 folks from our community for a 3-day conference. So if you're interested in learning more about that, you can come find me afterwards or learn more on the link tree. So happy to take questions if we have a few minutes. Thank you.
Hey, thanks so much, Oliver. It's great what you're doing. I think this is one of the valleys of deaths, I guess, between academia to translation. What, in some ways, you're obviously dealing with a lot of academics from different institutions. What's your relationship with the different? I fully appreciate that tech transfer is different across these institutions. Are they just going around them? Are you working through them? Yeah, I'm just curious. And are
Yeah.
there certain, has it been helpful or has it been not helpful? Yeah, this is always a big topic. So
It's a great question.
Curious what, yeah, on the ground, what you see.
Yeah, so it's super interesting. So in all of the ecosystems where we've started, like when we first start chapters and we start running the Activator, when we're going to start sourcing innovation from a particular university, we'll usually reach out to the TTO to like make them aware of like who we are and what our activities entail. The nice thing about Nucleate is we operate a completely non-confidential program. We're not funding, we're not providing lab space. It is purely mentorship, education, and connection. So in that way, there is no inventive step when you participate in Nucleate. So no new IP is created and no confidential information is disclosed. So we usually reach out to the technology transfer office, make them understand that, hey, you know, the only outcome that happens from this program is someone learns a thing or a company gets started, and then that company has to license the existing IP, which is good, right, for that university. And typically we get a range of responses. Some are just like, cool. I would say the majority response is like cool and then not as much engagement. And then there are a couple of universities where we've had very proactive engagement, like Berkeley, for example. We actually run an innovation fellowship with Berkeley's TTO where every year we get 5 Nucleate fellows that are paid through Nucleate but sort of work at the TTO at Berkeley, and they do these reports of emerging innovation. So they're embedded, you know, obviously in a lab at Berkeley, and we basically have them go around to all of their colleagues and say, hey, what are you working on? And like, what might be patentable 5 years from now? Not even in the next 12 to 18 months, which is typically where the TTO is looking, but like what's on the horizon. And then they put together these early emerging reports of innovation. That goes back to the TTO. Then that helps the TTO inform them of which labs and projects should we be proactively supporting, right, as new research is coming out. So it ranges all the way from like, that's cool, and then we never talked to them again, to like the Berkeley thing where they started a whole fellowship with us because they felt like it was really valuable to have more engagement from the students in their own department. And this is a theme that I see with Nucleate overall. It's like really focusing on the graduate students and the postdoc level. You know, a lot of people talk about faculty, a lot of people talk about research infrastructure, right? All of that's important, but at the end of the day, you look at an environment like the Church Lab, right? One of the reasons George's like lab starts so many companies is there's a large supply of people that are attracted to that lab that are at the bench doing the research that from day one are thinking about how to translate it and then also see themselves as someone that could become a founder CEO, right? At least for the time needed to get the company out of academia, right? So it's really this talent pipeline that I think is so important. And it goes back also to what Seema was talking about earlier with the Cure Innovation Index, right? Number one correlate was the culture of innovation, right? Like that was the number one variable that came out from who's winning the innovation index across all of those regions. How do you create that culture? Like, I think you can only create that from a bottom-up standpoint. I think it's actually almost impossible to create that culture in a top-down way.
Thank you. That was very useful. I'm curious about the U.S. university that you have been working. How about the university outside of the U.S. and what experience do you have and the challenges that you have to get the science and the technology and start a company based on that?
Yeah, it's a great question. So obviously we are in a lot of different regions, and I don't have extreme detailed knowledge of every one. That's, I think, really where a lot of our regional leadership have a great strength. But to just give you an example, like maybe of one that I'm more familiar with. First of all, every ecosystem is different, right? And there's very different problems in different areas. So, you know, like one example that is a challenge in the UK, right, is there's so much research, like per capita, the IP density in the UK is actually one of the highest on the planet. It's like higher actually than Kendall Square. But the translational output is actually very, very low. And the bottleneck up until more recently has been the licensing terms are just egregious. Like we've had some of our early startups coming out of like Oxford, Cambridge, and you know the university's asking for 40% equity in the company on an exclusive like license to the patent for a company that, you know, is at basically step one, right? And how useful is that IP typically in the long term, right? The companies always make more patents and sometimes those become more valuable than what was initially licensed. No investor is going to invest in a company that 40% of the equity is just held dead weight by a university that's not going to add value after the initial license, right? So in that, a lot of founders just shut down at that point. They're like, well, we can't get it together and the university is not incentivized. So just bringing it back to the like culture of innovation thing, I found that a lot of the first time founder like spin out academia problems are actually like cultural problems. Like people just don't even know, for example, that they can negotiate, right? So with our Nucleate UK chapter, there's a great story where we had one of our companies go through this situation, and they wanted 40% equity for this license. And that was after we'd introduced the founder to an investor who wanted to invest in the company. So they have an active investor, they're like ready to go, and they go to the university, and then everything stops because they want a 40% license. So our leadership team actually counseled that founder, and they were like, one, get a lawyer, because they entered into that conversation without a lawyer. They're like, absolutely get a lawyer. Two, like, tell your investor what's going on and come up with a strategy. And then basically the strategy they came up with was they had the investor kind of make a bluff or maybe it was real, I don't know. But the investor said, look, to the university, we're not going to invest in this company with 40%. It's got to be 10%, or we're just going to, the company's going to leave the UK, not license the patent, go incorporate in San Francisco, and we're just going to fund them to recreate. We don't need the patent, so take it or leave it, 10% or nothing. And they took it, and then the company started. So that all that had to happen there to sort of break that cycle was to like tell a founder, you can negotiate this, right? And then bring them in an investor and a little bit of leverage, right, to actually do the negotiation. Now the licensing terms in the UK are getting a lot better. And part of that is due to, I think, a cultural shift and also new things like ARIA, like the funding program they have out there. Then there's like, it's really a mindset change that I've seen in the past 5 years in the UK. More people can see themselves taking that founder path than before. Thank you.